I guess Biden only believes in competition so long as it does not interfere with his pet agendas like climate change and buy American protectionism. How convenient. So that was from a video I did a couple weeks ago where I was responding to President jibber-jabbering Joe Biden's State of the Union address. I was talking about how Biden sucks at living up to his own standards. On one hand, Biden talks about how he likes capitalism so long as there's enough competition, but then his buy American agenda and his climate change policies crush competition. Biden also loves to bitch and moan about how unfair the tax system is, and then he likes to brag about all of his new legislation that offers new tax incentives and subsidies. Well, since then, we have found out that Biden's Buy American agenda has resulted in delayed infrastructure projects, meaning both delayed job opportunities for Americans and delayed enjoyment of infrastructure. And this is despite Congress and the Biden administration passing a $1 trillion infrastructure bill about 16 months ago. According to David J. Lynch at the Washington Post, the Department of Transportation has denied requests made by the nation's ports to use federal infrastructure funds to purchase stuff like imported dock cranes, trucks, boat lifts, and other equipment after industry officials argued that no domestic manufacturers for such equipment exists. While state and local officials fear that Biden's Buy American mandates might make it difficult for them to acquire materials to build stuff like roads and high-speed rail. And this is not a new phenomenon. Lynch cites a 2019 report from the Congressional Research Service. The report discusses how Buy American mandates for federally funded projects has existed in some form since the 1970s, resulting in higher costs for taxpayers, delays in infrastructure development, and while the Buy American mandates may help maintain up to tens of thousands of jobs in areas like steel manufacturing, it is estimated that the United States would add hundreds of thousands of jobs overall if the Buy American mandates were terminated. And both President Trump and President Biden decided to double down on this idiocy. Nice work, everyone. Nate DiCamio also wrote about Biden's Buy American policies recently for Quartz Media, saying that such policies will not just impose higher costs on U.S. construction, but could also hobble American workers. When the U.S. adopts policies that make foreign products more expensive, like aluminum and steel tariffs, the overall result is a net loss of American jobs. Even if these tariffs create jobs in steel and aluminum factories, they kill more jobs in manufacturing. For example, when the cost of steel went up, companies that make products with steel in them laid off more workers. Speaking of steel, it looks like even some of the alleged free market libertarians are starting to argue that the reason why U.S. infrastructure sucks is because America has abandoned U.S. steel companies in favor of China, which one is clearly not true, as I just demonstrated with the Buy American mandates on federally funded infrastructure, and two, the majority of imported steel into the United States does not even come from China, but rather it comes from friendly countries like Canada, Mexico, South Korea, and Brazil, at least according to reports from both the Congressional Research Service and the International Trade Administration. And it's not just Buy American mandates. Environmental policies are continuing to hold up construction projects and blue-collar work, as we saw this week when a court in California ruled against the construction of new student housing at the University of Berkeley because of the California Environmental Quality Act also known as CEQA, which again means fewer construction jobs in California, along with higher housing costs for California residents. Again, nice work, everyone. For a more in-depth analysis on CEQA's impact on housing in California, check out the video I made on this topic. California Governor goofy-ass Gavin Newsom responded to the court's decision by saying a few wealthy Berkeley homeowners should not be able to block desperately needed student housing for years and even decades. Famous left-wing economist Robert Reich, who is a wealthy homeowner in the Berkeley area, who also has a history of trying to stonewall new housing development in the area in effort to maintain the charm of the community or some gobbledygook. What an asshole! Has yet to respond to Gavin Newsom's statement. Governor Newsom also mentioned that CEQA needs to change, and I disagree. CEQA needs to go into a garbage can. The CEQA story prompted Noah Smith to write a new article for his Substack where he talks about how America is behind on building. At one point, Noah Smith says, "For decades, I have heard progressives, including my friends and relatives, bemoan America's unwillingness to spend money on things like transit and green energy. But now America is spending all the money and things are still not getting built because of the country's broken system of permitting, land use, and development." This is such an important point that it bears repeating. Money is not physical stuff. Just because you earmark $5 billion for a subway or $2 billion for a solar farm in some Excel spreadsheet somewhere does not mean a physical train or a power plant has actually been created. If permitting holds up the process for years, then you still have not built a damn thing. And Noah Smith has a point. Merely throwing money at something does not magically yield results. We see this happen in public education all the time. It was recently reported that 93% of Baltimore's 8th graders are not proficient at math, while over 20 schools in the Baltimore School District have 0 students proficient in math, despite the fact that Baltimore spends over $20,000 per student per year on public education. We're seeing a similar trend out of Chicago, where it was recently reported that dozens of public schools in Chicago have 0 students who are proficient in math or reading, despite the fact that many of these schools spend over $20,000 per student per year on public education. So yeah, remember this next time some asshat tries to tell you that the problem with education is a lack of funding. There's also the tale of California's beloved high-speed rail project, which according to this piece on the New York Times was initially proposed to the public back in 2008 with a price tag of $32 billion and was expected to be completed by 2020. Well, now it's 2023 and surprise, surprise, the project is nowhere near complete and is now estimated to cost over $100 billion.
You absolutely suck!
Anyway, back to Noah Smith's article. Noah talks about the delays in green energy construction despite the Biden administration's generous favors for stuff like solar panels, wind turbines, and battery development. Not that I'm crazy about potentially making electricity grids worse by adding these shitty-ass wind turbines, but I do find it a little bit amusing that these alternative forms of energy that we're being forced to pay for in effort to save the world from climate change are not being built faster due to stuff like environmental review processes, along with permit restrictions and other regulations. Speaking of wind turbines, it was reported this week that the hero of our time, Greta No Thunberg the Great, was detained at a protest against the development of new wind turbines in Norway.
How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions?
Blow it out your ass.
And according to multiple articles, it looks like a reason for these protests was to prevent the reindeer in these regions from getting disturbed by these wind turbines, which I think serves as a nice reminder that these warmongers are fundamentally motivated by reducing human impact on nature. I mean, some of them, like this goon, are flat out anti-human. Anyway, these warmongers will certainly not stop at banning fossil fuel energy. Anyway, to tie this back to the beginning, not only does Biden's Buy American policies and his climate change policies interfere with his desire to increase competition in the marketplace, but they also interfere with Biden's goals of creating more jobs, creating more infrastructure, and decreasing the burden on taxpayers. Nice job, President Biden.